Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Hellraiser blog. Please, ladies and gentlemen, if you like today's blog, hit the subscribe and the notification bell so that you can be aware of future Hellraiser boxing blogs. Right, today's blog going to look at big fight coming up this weekend between Anthony Joshua and Oleksandr Usyk. Very intriguing fight, very interesting one. Joshua, obviously two-time heavyweight champion, Olympic Games gold medalist, against Oleksandr Usyk, another Olympic Games gold medalist and undisputed cruiserweight champion. Been boxing at heavyweight for some time now, and now he gets his chance against Joshua. I've got to say, my initial reaction to this fight is that if what we want is really the best spectacle that these guys can give us, maybe it would have been best to marinate this fight over the next 12 to 18 months, because Usyk as a heavyweight so far hasn't really set the world alight. Even as a cruiserweight, he was never like a huge devastating puncher. I was listening to some people talking the other day, comparing like when Holyfield moved up to heavyweight, and he had no problems with power, but Holyfield was always a huge puncher. And Evander Holyfield, how it felt to me was that he just could not make cruiserweight limit anymore. His body had far outgrown the weight limit, and he was losing huge amounts of weight during his fights, Evander Holyfield, because of the amount of boiling down to make the cruiserweight limit that he was doing. With Usyk, I never really felt that he was like a massive guy that had to boil down. I just think he beat everyone at cruiserweight. The money is certainly at heavyweight rather than at cruiserweight, and the WBO rules actually, if you relinquish a title to campaign at a higher division, you automatically become the mandatory, which meant that he automatically could hold a claim to being able to box Anthony Joshua and to enforce that, and he gets his chance. You can't begrudging him for taking it, and this is not a one-sided fight. This isn't where Usyk doesn't have a chance. It's just I think he had a bigger chance if he'd waited a little bit longer, but maybe his management and his promotional setup wanted to nail down the opportunity to fight Joshua while it was there, while he could get the mandatory position, especially after negotiations for Fury Joshua seemed to fall apart. So, like I say, Usyk's a former undisputed cruiserweight champion, Joshua 2 times heavyweight champion. Joshua has a 3-inch height and reach advantage. Usyk, funny enough, is the exact height and reach of Muhammad Ali. I don't really see many comparisons between Usyk and Muhammad Ali, but Usyk is a very, very good technical fighter. Doesn't quite have the blistering hand speed of Ali and many of the other facets, but he does have fantastic movement. He's a southpaw, and you can tell that he has been drilled on how a southpaw should box from a long, long way back. I've actually been to the University of Sport in Kiev, where Usyk was training. I've taken fighters out to Kiev before, and it's a hotbed of boxing talent. You've got some really, really good fighters and quite original style. You know, they don't all have like, normally you go to Cuba, you see them box with a Cuban style. You go to France, they have a certain style. You go to Germany, they have a certain style. What I noticed there was a lot of them, they encouraged the fighters to sort of do what they're good at. So they don't have, it's not the fighter comes and has to fit a certain mould. Fighter comes and they just enhance what they've got and try and get them to do it better. Anyway, so Usyk has a very unusual style. Like I say, perfect southpaw tactician, gets his right foot outside the front foot of the orthodox fighters. And I think a lot in this fight could depend on that. If Joshua can get his front foot outside of Usyk's and force that position, it does give him a better chance of being able to close down the space with Usyk, which I think is vital in this fight. If Usyk, because Usyk's quite a slow starter, he normally takes like 3 or 4 rounds before he really gets going. So if Joshua can make use of those 3 or 4 rounds, he has to absolutely win every one of those rounds, because you've got to remember as well, there's a huge amount of money resting on Joshua and Fury eventually being able to fight. I've heard a lot of talk, and I think it's correct, that this is Joshua's last fight under his current deal with Matchroom, meaning that after this fight he's in a much stronger position to negotiate on his own terms, I would imagine, and he might possibly could even be the reason why Joshua Fury didn't happen previously, because they might be waiting thinking, well, if we can free ourselves of any contractual obligations, we'll be in a position to negotiate financially a better deal from ourselves. And this has fallen at exactly the right time then for Usyk to grasp, to seize the opportunity, even if from a pure boxing point of view I'd have said Usyk would be better off waiting another year and a half or a couple of years. So the questions that I ask myself with this fight that are vital to the outcome of it: firstly, is Usyk strong enough? Because he's definitely technically good. For me, he's a better technical fighter than Joshua, and I don't think that Joshua's bad. I know that some people seem to think, oh, Joshua is just a monstrous big guy who overpowers people. I don't go with that. I actually think Joshua's a guy who's constantly in development, who's getting better and better, who is actually, despite being a big puncher and a strong guy, he's a thinking fighter, he's an intelligent guy, and I think he is not a sort of a brute who can't really box. He can, but Usyk for me is in a class of his own with down when it comes down to pure boxing ability. And I think here we can see Usyk, if he gets through the first 3 or 4 rounds pretty much unscathed. What I mean by that is not taking huge body shots. I mean, Joshua's got to get in there and work his body. He's got to cut down the range, focus not on single shots, because Usyk, you won't hit him with single shots. You've got to walk down, almost get your head on his chest, and if you can't hit his head, which is highly likely because Usyk is a very, very elusive target, punch to the chest, get your first shot into the chest, and early on certainly I'd want to see a lot of big punches to the body, even if that means holding him with one hand and battering him with the other. That's the way to slow Usyk's feet down. If you give Usyk the opportunity to have those first 3 or 4 rounds, and if Usyk manages to pinch a round or pinch a couple of rounds, it does make for a very, very interesting fight further down the line, because my feeling is if Usyk can ride the storm early on and not get too handicapped for the rest of the fight by injuries or by taking punishment to the body, his movement is such that I think Joshua could really struggle with him in the second half of the fight if he hasn't taken the wind out of his sails early on, because I think Usyk is a technically, tactically a brilliant fighter, and I think if Joshua struggles to find his range, can't land, or he comes in thinking I'm just a bigger guy, I'm going to take this by the scruff of the neck and pin him with one big shot, I think he could run into serious problems here, because I think he'll get outboxed by Usyk, and if he doesn't impose himself physically, he's going to give himself an uphill battle. And I think the way for Joshua to go is to get his feet in close. As I mentioned earlier, Usyk's a southpaw. He needs to get his foot in close and get his front foot outside of Usyk's front foot, so that Usyk doesn't have that freedom of movement to skip round the ring and cause Joshua to throw punches while he's out of range, that Usyk can then counter. I think Usyk will, if he counters early on, it will be with single shots or at most 1-2s. He's not going to stick around. He does look like he's bulked up quite a bit, Usyk, but even though he's bulked up, he'll be weaker than Joshua. That I'm certain of, by a long margin, and I think both of them will be aware of that, and for that reason I think you'll see Joshua trying to impose himself, trying to cut the space down between them, and Usyk trying to keep it long, and not trying to engage in 3 or 4 punch combinations and standing toe to toe, certainly with Joshua early on. For Joshua, I'd like to see him double up on the jab, punch to the chest if he's struggling to find his range or to connect with the jab to the head, punch to the chest. If you can't hit him in the chest, hit him in the shoulder, hit him in the arm, hit him anywhere, so that Usyk is forced to work at Joshua's pace, so that Usyk can't just think, yeah, this is easy, I can see his punches, they're slower than, although I've actually had a boxer fight Joshua who told me his hands are very quick, much quicker than when they saw him. It was at the point when Joshua was quite muscle bound, And he said to me, I just couldn't believe the speed of him. When I saw how big he was, I thought he's big, he's going to be slower than what he is. But if Usyk, obviously he's campaigned at cruiserweight, he's been in with smaller, faster guys, and if he can start to read the algorithms that Joshua works at, the pace and the angles that he comes at, and Usyk himself is a genius at changing the target of his punches, can focus on the body, then focus on the head, then he focuses on the body again. He can switch angles, so he's coming from one angle, then he switches, coming at a different angle, then he goes back, reverts, and he changes at a completely different angle again. He can dip down the levels, so he's up, he's down, he's back up again, and keeps the opponents thinking and keeps the opponent struggling to work out what he's doing mentally. I think from Joshua's point of view, he can't get involved in that chess match. I'm not saying fight without using your brain. I mean, he needs to not make it just a physical brawl. He needs to use it, engage his brain, but not try and out chess match Usyk, because I think Usyk gets the better of that chess match. What I think Joshua needs to do, and Joshua's very clever and very good at almost imposing a certain tactic, making it look like... I went to a fight at Wembley when he fought, and he was constantly throwing the right hand to the body. I can't remember who it was he fought. Anyway, he was constantly throwing the right hand to the body, to the point where his opponent became so conditioned to that right hand to the body that he then feinted the body and brought it up, and that was the end of the fight. He sort of stopped it pretty much there and then. The opponent came undone. But I think that's the sort of thing he's got to do here. Even if it looks repetitive, I wouldn't say that means he's not engaging mentally. I would think that means he's trying to condition Usyk that he's throwing the right hand to the body, and if he gets his feet in close enough and closes down that distance, he can hit Usyk. This is what I would want to do in his shoes: hit Usyk with thunderous shots to the body. I mean, we used to see Frank Bruno hit round the back of the head, and then people would say, "Oh, he hit round the back of the head. You know, that's a rabbit." It is, and it's against the rules. But for Frank, it worked very well because it rattled his opponents, and it took a lot of the sting out of them early on. And if I was Joshua fighting Usyk in this fight, that's probably not that far off what I would be thinking, because if you try and box in pure boxing against Usyk, I think you could easily come short, even if you've got advantages strength and size wise. I think Usyk has got the phenomenal, incredible movement, and he seems almost like he's not quite he seems like a one-off, certainly a heavyweight, and it'd be interesting to see how he's progressed. People that say, oh, but he struggled against Chisora, and Chisora's past his best, and he made hard work of that. He did, but remember this: Usyk was never the devastating one-punch knockout merchant. Most of his stoppages came from wearing people down, from setting them up, from taking them into the trenches and wearing them down and then hitting them with these big shots. He wasn't like a Mike Tyson who would hit people cold and take them out of the game. I think one thing that doesn't really rest well with me, but that could be effective in this fight, is the fact that there's a lot of money, a mountain of money, resting on Fury versus Joshua. Now, because Joshua probably generates that money, we have to bear in mind, governing bodies will be aware of that. If it's close, and I think certainly in Usyk's mindset, he won't be coming thinking, I'll go away to Joshua and nick it on points, which I think it would be, really, in fairness, it would be his best tactic, because if he has to stop Joshua and he has to really beat him up, which he probably has to do to get the decision in his mind, it's a hard task. If he could win it nicking it off the back foot, I think he'd stand a better chance. But I just think, with the way that we know sometimes decisions can go away from home, if he thinks, oh, I'll just pinch, just nick it by just edge each round, the decision for that round can go against him, and it puts him in a very difficult situation. So Usyk has pressure, I think, to actually come and bring the fight to Joshua. There's no way he's going to do that early on, although he might stand and, just to make a statement, try and land sort of a 3 or 4 punch combination before reverting back to like the single shot and the 1-2s and moving a lot, because if he stands for long, Joshua will stop him. I actually think Joshua, you know, there's a good chance that he could stop Usyk anyway, but if Usyk makes himself a very elusive target as he normally does, then that could stretch it to points. Whenever Joshua's had the choice, he's quite often opted for shorter opponents, for tall opponents, and going in against one like Usyk, who's shorter and also has the head movement. I think if Joshua tries to box him purely, he could have some sticky moments. I think he could look a little bit raw at times, and he could look like he's a little bit out of sorts. But then I think this is what I expect. I think Usyk will be very elusive early on, and I think Joshua has to win those 4 rounds and do damage to Usyk. Then I think the middle rounds, Usyk come back into the fight. When it comes down to pure athletic ability and boxing, and Joshua's no slouch. I mean, he's a monster athlete. But if Usyk comes back at Joshua, then I think we'll see Joshua come back, say in the final third of the fight, and I think the damage that he can do at that point, and he gets his second wind, and he starts the distance between them starts to shorten, and Joshua can start teeing off sort of maybe with longer combinations and varying his punches to head and body. I think if I always put my finger on one result, and this is what I'm going to go for. I'm going to go for Anthony Joshua by stoppage in the 10th round. Reason why I go for the stoppage, because I think if he can do the damage, which I think he will, because he's not going to try and outbox Usyk, he's going to take this to Usyk early on and make sure that he does damage early. I think Usyk, very good boxer, skillful guy, he's genuine world class, absolute, you know, cream of the cream world class, and I think he will have good enough boxing ability to take that middle part of the fight. But then I think Joshua can come back, and as long as he's done the damage early on and slowed Usyk's feet down a little bit for the second half of the fight, I'm opting for Joshua. But really intriguing fight. Ladies and gentlemen, if you've enjoyed the blog, please hit the like and subscribe buttons, and I will see you again. Enjoy the fight. Love hearing your comments when you've watched the blog, so I'll keep an eye out for those as well. Thanks for watching, guys. Bye bye.